Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to, and before that, I would like also to thank the organizers who come a long way from Malaysia to come to Jakarta to have these conferences. Thank you for providing this very good platform for us. I'm very happy with the organizer because you guys actually asked me to talk about global governance mechanism, so I don't want to talk about anti-corruption in Indonesia because it will be difficult for me to talk about it. So today I think I'm going to talk about challenges in investigating and prosecuting multi-jurisdiction corruptions because this is some kind of like a global governance mechanism. Can you go just next? Yes, I think Kofi Annan said already as crime crosses all borders, especially corruptions. So must law enforcement agencies. And next, this is from me. I was actually taking it from him. So if corruptors and criminals are organized, so must law enforcement officers and anti-corruption activists like us. Because I don't think they are very, very efficient and effective in organizing themselves. If you don't believe me, then you can ask seasoned police officer over here. But it is important to be well organized among us. Next, please. But we only have this. No, of course, we have many other things. But I think the legal foundation for global anti-corruption governance, we have United Nations Convention Against Corruptions, and also we have that Transnational Crimes Convention, and we have this FATF platform to work together. And for the first two conventions, almost universally ratified by all states, and it is successful to establish a foundation for international cooperation, regional cooperation, and to prevent, combat, and corrupt organized crime. However, in my eyes, and in the eyes of many people, it's still difficult to bridge meaningful cooperation among states because corruptions and money laundering are usually conducted by powerful individual organizations. How can you actually work together with, I don't want to say name of the country, but say a country A, but his minister actually involving in that? It is very difficult to do it. For example, I will explain it later in one or two cases that we actually doing. But I mean, it is always difficult. You can have all good conventions, but if it actually involving high-ranking officials, then become very difficult to do it. Next, please. This is what the convention telling us. We have extraditions, transfer of sentenced person, mutual legal assistance, transfer of criminal proceeding, cooperation, joint investigation, etc. In my short experience in KPK in 4 years, I think agency-to-agency cooperation, it is one of the most important things. I put it in the first. The second, mutual legal assistance, of course. We can use also Interpol channel, financial intelligence unit channel through Edmond Group, and sometimes we even actually use the network of immigration if we want to ask someone not to travel further, for example. This is very, very important. I have several cases with Malaysians, for example, just using the immigrations, which is actually is not common. But actually we were successful actually to detain once here in Jakarta because they have to go back to their own country because they finished their visa, and our friend in Malaysia, Syarif, just waiting in Jakarta airport. In his way, so he just take it. I mean, no need mutual legal assistance for those kind of things. But it is very, very effective. Next, please. Yeah. So the information sharing mechanisms, usually we started from agency to agency. This is very, very, in the bottom one, very important. We can actually telephone. We can actually use WhatsApp. Even once you know the people. And of course, we actually follow with legal assistance, mutual legal assistance to make it formal. And we can also use diplomatic channel through the embassy, etc. And to tell you the truth, usually hopeless. Once you go through the diplomatic level, and if it is actually involving high-ranking official, it's just like, okay, no use at all. Sorry, but I mean, that's my 4 years experience for being Commissioner of Corruption Eradication Commission of Indonesia. But to tell you the truth, with agency-to-agency cooperation, once upon a time, during the investigation of one MDBs, the big case in Malaysia, I got call from the investigation from SPRM, the MACC. He just texted me. We have someone in Jakarta, and I think, can you actually locate him? So, do you have a letter? And they say, no, but please help me. I knew him because he was actually a participant in international crime training in Jakarta Center for Law Enforcement Agency in Semarang. Yeah, I can mention his name. It's Mohan. And I said, send me email. No, this is very different. How do I know him? This is the address of his in Jakarta because he married Indonesian woman. This is related to one MDB case, big one. And then it was like, okay, I asked my few people here in KPK next doors and actually check it and say, yes, he's here because he married Indonesian guys. And we can actually follow him almost in daily basis until we reported it. We don't do anything, but we knew actually he's in Jakarta. And he actually, went to sign. And the next day, Mohan called me again and say, the Yah of Jilo actually in Bali. And I say, what do you want me to do with that? Can you confiscate it from us? And say, no. We need a letter for that, because we can do no more than that one. But I just want to tell you, agency to agency or people to people, it is actually very, very important. And Mohan say, so what we can do? And I say, you guys actually have very good relationship with the Indonesian National Police, right? And he said, yes, we do. And so I said, call them, because usually they are more creative than us. To cut the story short, the Yah actually leave Bali and go through Malacca Strait, and the Malaysian authority take it to the port. Nice, easy, agency to agency, no headache, if you are trust each other. Next, please. So, I just want to give you this Nazaruddin case, one of KPK case, very important one in 2011. Next slide. But you can actually use from Jakarta. I think he took Garuda or Singapore Airlines, went to Singapore and went to Vietnam almost in the same day, went to Cambodia. He charters Cambodia's a jet in Cambodia and go to Colombia. Can you imagine if you are going through the diplomatic channel, mutual legal assistance for that? No. It is agency to agency. So we successfully work. Actually, if we are kind of like late 3 hours, he will be already become the citizen of Colombia at that time. In a week. Next. This is not important. Next. This one. Next. This is very important one because this is involving the Speaker of Indonesian Parliament. And when I have to go to US to meet the director of the FBI, And it is very difficult for me. It was the test of my diplomatic skill. Because I knew him. He is actually the friend of the President of the United States at that time. And fortunately, I met the deputy of the FBI, and he said, "What make you fly from Jakarta to here?" "Yeah, because this is a very important case." "Who is this guy?" I said, "The Speaker of the Parliament." And he said, "Local Parliament?" I say, "No, this is actually the Speaker of Indonesian Parliament, just like Nancy Pelosi of yours." And he said, "Are you crazy?" But this is important. That's why I'm coming to you. Because the evidence only in U.S. We don't have evidence here. I mean, there are evidence of him. Next. So, to cut the story short, he is in jail now. But when he was in jail, he still bribed the head of the jail, and he can actually make his room become very luxury jail kind of rooms. But he's still in jail, fortunately. Next. Next. So this is actually the multi-jurisdiction investigation challenges. One, non-cooperative jurisdiction. I don't want to name the state, but one KPK case, you have to wait until almost 6 years because they are not cooperating with us. And of course, legal system difference sometimes can create a problem. Mutual legal assistance through diplomatic channels need some kind of diplomatic skill to do it. And rapid movement of sophisticated modus operandi, usually it is very, very difficult now to do it because it is very fast to move once, like $1 billion, just like 10 minutes, you can do it now. And it is very, very difficult. And lastly, it may be classic. To tell the truth, English, it is very difficult language for Indonesians, for many other countries. But we are operating with it is not our mother tongue. Sometimes it is also created difficulties. Next, please. Yeah, this is, we have this on the left, call it traditional mutual legal assistance. And we have it here, a new improved mutual legal assistance. But in reality, it takes time, inefficient to combat fast-moving corruption case or to combat drug-related case. Everything organized crime. So it is always, I think the Dutch phrase said, I don't speak Dutch, but I think het achter de feiten aan. So I said, the law, it is always behind the fact. So we are always late to cut. So the criminals actually more effective in doing their business than law enforcement agency. Next, please. So this is the agency to agency, the importance of it. The pro, unfortunately, we cannot actually use it as evidence in court. So we need actually the proof. But again, I want to say is this, the current legal framework, global legal framework, it is not designed to catch fast-moving crime. Next. I think I want to remind ourselves, and sorry for not putting your logo on it. You provide us a page actually, but I have to put it actually. But I mean, if corruptors and criminals are organized, so must law enforcement agencies and anti-corruption activists. Lastly, last slide. I like my friend from the Philippines. Heidi Mendoza say like this: fighting corruption is like being a mother. You have no right to stop, and giving up is not an option. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Dr. Laode, thank you so much. Okay, so next I would like to invite Professor So.
Yeah, good afternoon. The topic on global governance is an immense topic. And for today, I will focus my sharing on enhancing international cooperation in fighting corruption, as well as addressing the cyberspace dimension in international cooperation. So next. So when we look at global governance, there are two elements to it. Firstly, we do have to look at national governance and anti-corruption system. That is a baseline. And then on top of that, as countries work together, then there's a need to look at international cooperation in governance and anti-corruption. Then when we look at the global governance, there are two focal areas. Firstly, of course, we look at the corruption crime. And in today's context, corruption crime may not be a crime that exists in isolation. It could be mixed up with other crimes. It could be mixed up with human trafficking. It could be mixed up with scams and other forms of organized crime. So that's one. And secondly, there's the money laundering crime that also run alongside the corruption crime. And the two crimes may not necessarily coincide. In fact, many a times they don't coincide because the criminal networks wants to mask the movement of the money. So you are essentially dealing with two different criminal nets. So you do have to tackle both elements, and either one or two elements, meaning the corruption crime as well as the money laundering crime, may involve the international dimension. Next. So for international cooperation to exist, then you will have to rest on a foundation of every country putting in place their national systems and then being prepared to work with each other in the international framework. And of course, acting on corruption crimes as well as money laundering crimes. Next. So at the international level, when we talk about the mechanisms to advance international cooperation, there are the existing modes that are currently in place and well used by countries. Agency-to-agency cooperation was mentioned quite extensively. I don't have to go through that point again, but that certainly is an efficient way of anti-corruption agencies reaching out to their counterparts across the borders. And of course, with agency-to-agency cooperation, there's a need to follow through using legal mechanisms such as mutual legal aid, mutual legal assistance, as well as extradition treaties. So different mechanisms required for different purposes, whether, for example, if you need to acquire evidence, documents, or seize properties, that's through mutual legal assistance. And if you need to identify and arrest suspects and to return the suspects, then that's through extradition. So the key to this, making this system work, earlier the speaker mentioned that the legal mechanisms don't work very well. And it's true in today's context, it's tedious and it's slow. It doesn't work very well. But really the key is to have countries always in contact with each other to firstly iron out the policy arrangements between them, because there are differing legal frameworks in different countries, and that sometimes presents an obstacle, and they need to sit down and sort out the policy differences. And then with that, follow through with practical implementation of the measures between the countries. And the various mechanisms in place do provide the avenues for countries to work together. So earlier was mentioned also UNCAC is still a valid overarching mechanism. And within UNCAC, within UNCTAD, there's a peer review mechanism, which I believe is quite useful because countries will comment on each other's systems and then offer their views and the suggestions for improvement. So that's one way to improve international cooperation. And then at the regional level, if you look at ASEAN, within ASEAN there's a network which is a ministerial meeting to manage transnational organized crime. And that includes corruption issues as well. So regional mechanisms also can be useful venues to allow countries to get together to discuss the issues and then to reduce the hurdles to international cooperation. Next. If we look at the operational level, we talk about agency-to-agency cooperation. So between countries, that is an important mechanism to use. At the UN level, the UN ODC has designed and managed this GLOBE network, which is a network connecting all the anti-corruption agencies at the operational level to improve the way they work with each other and support each other in international cooperation to fight corruption. So by bringing operational agencies together, you also enhance the ability to work with each other. So they have arrangements such as training workshops as well as knowledge sharing. For example, they built a compendium of best practices that anti-corruption agencies can adopt when they have to work with agencies across the borders. Next. And there are many other international cooperation mechanisms that are put in place. Here within ASEAN, there's the ASEAN Pact, which has been in existence for many years. Again, a mechanism that brings together the anti-corruption agencies of ASEAN. So they sit together, they can discuss policy, legal issue, as well as operational issues, and in that way help to reduce the difficulties faced in international cooperation. And there are other mechanisms, and in this part of the world, many countries are involved in the ADB, OECD Anti-Corruption Initiative, as well as the APEC Anti-Corruption Working Group, as well as the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group. So these are all mechanisms that are in place that will help to facilitate and improve international cooperation. Next. So the key really is that there has to be all these mechanisms that allow countries to get together to discuss their policy and legal framework so that they can be more efficient when they have to work together. And this then have to be followed by practical implementation, because it will be quite futile if it's all the time just talk and discussion and seminars, but no action. So it's really focusing on action that you can then say that you are able to maximize the value of international cooperation to fight corruption as well as money laundering. So really practicing agency-to-agency support as mentioned earlier, then followed by mutual legal assistance and extradition. And the trick really is, as agencies and countries get to know each other better, then you form stronger relationships. And with stronger relationships, you can then be more effective in international cooperation. So I put out at the side there, recently in Singapore, we uncovered a major money laundering case with assets about 2.8 billion. So in recent times, this is one of the biggest money laundering case around the world. So as this is initiated and developed from Singapore, it clearly shows the international connections when you talk about crime and its impact worldwide. Of course, this case is not about corruption. The predicate offenses that led to the money being laundered were scams as well as gambling. Gambling and scams were the originating crime. And these crimes occur in various countries outside Singapore. So as the case is developed from Singapore, there's connection with many countries where the scams and the gambling occurred. And then at the same time as it develops from Singapore, we also find the connections with other countries where the criminal proceeds were also laundered, not just laundered in Singapore, but other countries. So as we develop such cases through international cooperation, through agency-to-agency cooperation, all these can benefit and allow different countries to act on the problem. Next. So I'll just quickly touch on the impact of technology. So we talk about international cooperation in fighting corruption, but we know the corruption crime has evolved, and this has been facilitated by technology. For example, use of encryption, use of cryptocurrencies. And corruption crime and cybercrime are interlinked. So corruption crime can facilitate cybercrime, and cybercrime can fuel corruption. Next. And with the advent of technology, we now see that crime, corruption crime, money laundering crime is now affected by three phenomena. Speed is very fast to move money, to do transactions. Secondly, scale. It can be global in nature easily. And then complexity. With use of high tech, with use of cryptocurrency, it can be more complex. Next. And we can see that the advent of technology, as more and more technology is developed for various legitimate users, it is being abused for various crime types, including corruption. So corrupt criminals, criminal networks can use encryption to mask their communication. They can use transactions through the darknet. They can launder their money through cryptocurrencies. And they can use other emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence. In this chart, you can see the use of cryptocurrencies in illicit transactions. So corruption is not featured up there, but you can see it is behind the scenes because corruption is also associated with, say, human smuggling, which is up there, and with scams, which is also up there. Next. So it only means that at the international level, again, countries must get together to discuss their policy and legal issues so that they can be better able to manage the complexity brought about by the cyber dimension. And at the operational level, countries do have to work together to fight the cyber dimension of corruption and other crimes. So a lot of effort will have to be placed in capacity building because earlier we talked about criminals using high tech such as encryption and using cryptocurrencies. So on the other side, the governmental agencies, the law enforcement, anti-corruption agencies must also develop their ability and capability to deal with such high-tech instruments. Next. So in summary, really when we talk about enhancing global governance and anti-corruption, we'll have to depend on the existing framework, agency-to-agency support, which is very important, as well as working through the legal mechanisms, which of course can be further improved. and then building capacity among countries. Because earlier was mentioned that the criminal networks cooperate very well with each other, but similarly, law enforcement and government authorities must cooperate well, and we should build our capacity in managing such crimes, and today in managing the high-tech component of such crimes. And lastly, we must be prepared to work at speed and deal with the scale and the complexity of the problems. With that, thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Sof. Last but not least, Mr. Mick Symons.
Thank you. Next. I'm going to approach the topic by discussing two questions. The first one to consider about is at the top of the slide there. How can we reconcile the tension between the need for effective global governance and the preservation of national sovereignty and cultural diversity? So the situation is that we have UNCAC that's out there. That's a guiding document. It's not chipped into stone. It's a guiding document. But one of the issues that we do have with corruption, and there are many definitions that are out there, and I don't want to go through those, but we have Transparency International and we have a number of others. But and there's also, I hesitate to use the term, it's very rare to go to a corruption-related matter and hear somebody not say that corruption's like a cancer. I see corruption more as a river that flows through a country, starting up in the mountains, flowing down to the sea, and as that river comes through, it either provides sustenance to people or it can flood and destroy a village. So with corruption and the way that we look at corruption across the various areas and countries, we should think of that as a river. And what can we do as agencies, as the governments, and as people on the ground to contain the river? We can take steps by putting stones against the bank. We can build levees. We can build dams. If each and every one of us, in our capacity, either in government or in NGOs, carries a rock towards that river in any country, then we can help with addressing the issues of corruption. But we cannot go to any area and impose our will. So the UNCAC, or UNCAC, as I said, is a guiding document. It's not a document that instructs us, you will do this. So we must be flexible. Let me just quickly draw another analogy to think about. It is pointless if you are moving into a house and someone comes in to decorate the house and goes into your bedroom and puts this sheet on your bed and says, that's your sheet, that's what you're going to sleep in tonight. You then go into the room and the sheet's too small, it's got holes in it, and you say, hey, I don't want that sheet, I want a good sheet that fits my bed. You turn around and say, sorry, that's your sheet. And that's one of the issues when we try and influence and impact upon people by coming in at a top level and instructing people how to address how to address corruption. So, what I'd like to do as we move forward, think about how we can address that by considering socio-economic context, country-specific adaptations. Next. One of the, and I turn to my man on the right who has experience with the Singapore corruption, was one that had looked at the cultural issues of Singapore, the nuances and requirements, and developed an agency that's one of the most effective agencies in the world, let alone in the Asian market. They considered what was required, they monitored, evaluated and took action. Next. So, how do we do this? What can we do? And we've spoken about this by a couple of speakers. We've now got blockchain. The utilisation of blockchain at various levels within the corruption prevention, corruption investigation, providing of funds through NGOs, restricts the capacity for people to engage in corruption. So if you can restrict capacity, what you will do is you will reduce the potential for corruption. Artificial intelligence. Now, I started speaking 7 minutes ago, or roughly 7 minutes ago. I can guarantee that there's been 100 million changes in the artificial intelligence since then. It is the most explosive change in technology that we're ever going to experience, and we should be looking at ways to utilise that towards reducing the effect and eliminating, where possible, corruption. We need to adapt to the local area, the local realities. Okay, hark back on the cultural sensitivities. Next. We need to look at bridges. Bridges across, well, go back to my river analogy. A bridge from one side of the river to the other. How are we going to build that to provide support? We need to get involved in advocating, local policy influence, education, capacity building. The gentleman from Brunei spoke about the program they've got with education. I know in the Hong Kong ACCA, one of their biggest moves back in when they first got moving was they had comic books out. They had a television program that used to run like a crime-fighting program that was used to educate. Sorry about that. My apologies. Was used to educate. We've got to involve the cultural synergy, monitoring and accountability and things like that, and partnerships with agencies, partnerships with NGOs, and a transition and innovation into anti-corruption strategies. Next. We have to get people involved. We must have acceptance on the ground to succeed. Community engagement is one of the essential parts of corruption prevention. And it also assists with investigation, because then you're turning around and you have a scenario where people have trust in your agencies and they will speak to you and tell you what is happening. Next. You've got to also consider the ethical considerations. If people do not believe that you as an agency or you as a government are acting correctly and ethically, it erodes public trust. So the utilisation or the impact of corruption in that, it just destroys the values of society. If you're trying to imagine, and I use a lot of analogies, if you're trying to imagine that you're weaving a beautiful rug, and that rug you're going to throw over the corrupt influences in your community. If the corruptors get hold of the thread, if they weaken the thread, or if they get hold of the rug and they pull the rug apart, and you do nothing to stop it, you don't win. So you need to move forward and ensure that justice does occur. Next. The principles of good governance in anti-corruption, and I won't read through them, but you can see they are listed there. And if you don't engage in the principles of good governance, then any effort, either in an agency or any action you take to eliminate or reduce corruption, will not succeed. It's important that you address those issues to move forward. Next. You need to have grassroots. remember, I go back to the sheet on the bed. You've got to get those people involved. You've got to ask them what size sheet do they want. What do you want in the community? What's the biggest issues you've got in the community, and how can we address those issues together? Have the people make the decisions. Have the people be accountable. And you work with them. Next. Citizen participation is very important, and I reinforce that. But one of the other issues that we do find with corruption investigation is a lack of protection for people who want to come forward. So as you're building your structure, you need to consider and think about how can we protect people who are prepared to help us. The common terminology of that is the whistleblower, and there are some states, some countries that do have quite a very effective whistleblower legislation for protection. But if you fail, or your organisation fails to protect a whistleblower, and that becomes public knowledge, the river has gone over the bank. You're going to not be successful as you move forward. There's a bottom of the slide, you'll see there's a thing that's from India, and it's called I Paid a Bribe. And that started some years ago, and I looked at it a couple of days ago, and it's still quite effective. These are the people in the room, sitting at the bottom level of the triangle, and they say, I had to pay a bribe, and they nominate who they paid it to, why they paid it. And the person is publicly humiliated. It's the good old version of the stocks. But it also triggers action to address the bribe. So these are the type of things that can be done as part of the oversight of ethical considerations. Next. If you don't have an effective legal structure, I go back to the river. The river has now flooded the country. People will only report and act if they believe that the structure within the organisation, within the country, has sufficient integrity to address that independently and reach a decision. If the judiciary is corrupted, you've lost the country. Next. There are ways to do that, and once again there's a series of points on the slide there to look at of how you can cultivate integrity and move forward on that. Next. You've got to move together, and the previous speaker spoke about all the various organisations and agencies that interact. We need to utilise what's available. Next. And that's it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mick. So that's all the three presentations regarding global governance. And before we invite the floor to ask or address questions, maybe I would like to ask all the panelists' point of views or maybe experience, especially in civil society organizations and grassroots movements, how they can effectively influence and hold the global governance, maybe from your perspective or from your personal experience more on the civil society organizations. Maybe you want to start, Dr. Laode? Sorry.
Yes, things are... The involvement of civil society group, the pressure group, it is very, very important. I tell a story before I actually move here with him about the history of KPK building next door. Once upon a time, the parliament, they don't want to sign for the establishment of KPK building. So the people actually gathering, the students went to red light and asking a donation, call it coin for KPK building. And we collected about 200 million Indonesian rupiah, no US dollars. And we actually brought the coin to the parliament. Only a few days after that, the parliament agreed. Now we have a red and white building next door. That at national level. So never ever actually put your hope only on the mercy of the politician when you talk about anti-corruption. No. It is the people. It is the people. So in international level, that's why we have, you call it, ANCAC coalitions. So the Indonesian Corruption Watch, Malaysian Corruption Watch, many other watch in Indonesia, we actually, including my organization, Partnership for Governance Reform, actually we are part of United Nations Convention Against Corruption coalitions. So this is very, very important to voice our concern. For the Indonesia, it is very timely because we will have general election next year. When I left the KPK, our corruption perception index was 40, and today, 34. Never in the history of Indonesia actually going down. Only in the last 5 years. So meaning, we have to be, to make up our mind who is among the 3 candidates that can actually go for anti-corruption. It is include at global level. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Laode. Ms. Mick?
I can't think of the gentleman's name. There was a fruit seller some years ago in the Middle East who could no longer pay the bribes. So he set himself on fire. That gentleman, God rest his soul, was the start of the Arab Spring. That was the start of the movement by the people many years ago to address corruption. And that led to the overturning of a number of regimes. So I don't suggest that that's the best way to get things moving, but it does show that the people, if the people do get themselves involved to the stage of being loud enough and strong enough, then they will take action, and that action can address issues of corruption. And we've seen that in Malaysia was a recent situation there, which I won't go into great detail about, but we're aware of the overturning of political parties because of allegations of corruption by the people and taking action against it.
Thank you, Mr. Mick.
Yeah. So earlier we talked about global fight against corruption, and we really need to look at both levels, the national level, as well as what we do in international cooperation. And I would say that when we look at this, we not only look at the role played by governmental authorities or anti-corruption agencies, but we do need to look at all the other stakeholders. So you talk about NGOs and civil society. The private sector, the business and companies also play an important role. And where do they all fit in? It's really through the whole cycle of the anti-corruption effort that we look at, from awareness, prevention, proactive measures, to enforcement, prosecution measures. At every stage, the civil society, the NGO can play a part. And today, with the use of technology and the pervasiveness of internet and social media, we can really see the value of citizen participation, civil society contribution. You know, sometimes information is put out in the social media, that tells us a lot about what is happening. And if you look at the recent past few years, and you look at the release of papers termed as the Pandora Papers, the Paradise Papers, Panama Papers, these were all released through efforts of the NGOs. And many of them do it at considerable risk to themselves. But what does it tell us? It tells us, it shines a light on a lot of what is going on, not just corruption, but other forms of crime as well. And then it does lead to certain action. It leads to enforcement. People get arrested. Money is seized and confiscated. And then some issues are addressed. For example, this whole issue of corporate transparency and beneficial ownerships. When criminals try to hide their illegal proceeds under companies and then mask their beneficial ownership. This is now an issue that the international community is working on to try to reduce the use of such a beneficial ownership arrangements and to increase corporate transparency. So certainly there's a lot of value that NGO and civil society can bring about.
All right, thank you so much, Professor So. So, I would like to invite the floor to, okay, we have one here and, okay, two. For now, 2 questions. Okay, the first one, gentleman, right here. Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Rizal, and I'm representing Indian Mission to ASEAN. So my question, I think it is a general question that the 3 distinguished speakers can also answer this question parallelly. So my question is, how has the implementation of e-government system and digital platform contributed to transparency and accountability in government processes? And what are the potential limitations and risks for the eradication of corruption itself? Thank you.
So you would like to answer directly? Professor So will start. Okay.
Okay. E-government has been recognized as a tool to reduce corruption opportunities. So if governmental processes such as licensing application and application for permits move online, then we reduce the number of steps that are taken through the manual process. So in the manual process, maybe there are handovers, and then there's face-to-face interaction, and then time is taken, and then in the time that is taken, there may be more opportunities open to temptation and open for corruption vulnerabilities. So that reduces it. And by moving transactions onto e-services, you also are better able to control timing, control confidentiality of information. So if you say public tender closes at what time, it does close at that particular time as determined in the system. And then you say that information submitted has to be kept confidential. Then within the system, you can put in the IT security measures to ensure that. So it does, I think e-services does play an important part in reducing corruption tendencies. And there are some research studies that show that with introduction of e-services, there is indeed a reduction in corruption tendencies in various countries that are part of the research study. So of course, when we talk about the risks and the potential downside of e-services, then that really is a reflection on whether the e-services are resilient enough to ensure that public services continue to be delivered efficiently and effectively. So if e-service has been subject to, say, IT security attack, then it goes down, and with that, citizen services are affected. Data may be pilfered. And maybe a more insidious means may mean that if the system is not well protected, then criminal networks may actually feed on all that valuable data sitting inside the e-services system. They may extract data and then use it for their criminal purposes. So as countries deploy e-services, they need to make sure it's resilient and is well protected.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor So. Dr. Laode, you want to add something?
Yes, I just want to add one small thing. That's about the, I agree everything that has been said, but also it has to be complemented with the people, with the good people behind the technology. I just want to give you an example. Indonesia, we have e-procurements now, very good one, the systems, but in the beginning of that, it's not the current one. Usually, they can actually communicate with the people in that procurement agency and say, please send your application in particular time. So, for example, it's like 9 to 12. I will open it to make it wider. So they actually shrinking the bandwidth of the systems so that you cannot actually apply online because they actually pay bribe. They still pay bribe, but after that, people know about it and actually they change it. Just like in Bandung, also they do the same things. So they call it. But I think the technology was not good. It's not the good one because they still need someone inside the office to be click the application. So there was a term called it one click, meaning actually a click money in Bandung. It is very close. So they reported to KPK, but it was low level. When I was a commissioner, it is low level crime. So the KPK can only prosecute a high-ranking official or more than 1 billion Indonesian money. So we reported to the police. So again, technology can give a lot of opportunity for good governance, but at the same time, behind the technology is still human. That is, you need to look at also the human aspect of the technology. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Laode. Okay, so we'll go directly to the second question. Yes. We still have time. Less than 5 minutes.
Thank you very much for giving me a short time. I think I just want to relate with Dr. Kim Rui with the conflict of interest in the public service. Dr. Laode, in Indonesia is because she mentioned about the tense conduct, right? Because what happened is during the campaign in Indonesia, the politician has like 6 months, and I think they still have public servant. They do the campaign, and how does you elaborate on the conduct? Because in Indonesia has the Undang-Undang Nomor 30 kan, tahun 2014 tentang public servant of the conduct. As me is because I'm also working for the Partai Solidaritas Indonesia. We are sounding the anti-corruption, but when it comes to our budgeting, we really don't know what is the guideline. Compared to Singapore, maybe they don't have multi-party too much. In Indonesia, has a lot of multi-party, and in Singapore, maybe Dr. Koh is already mentioned about gambling, terrorism. In Korea also. In Indonesia, we don't have that gambling business much, even though we have the online business. But when it comes to the party, because in Indonesia is a lot of party, what is the guideline, in order to receive the donation, in order to get, sponsor? If those guidelines don't have it, then it's just we don't know what when it comes to the preventions. Yeah, that's all my question.
I think it's for me. Conflict of interest is prohibited in Indonesia, including in the law that you just mentioned, in KPK law also mentioned, in many others. However, it is only say that. We do not have a comprehensive guidance on conflict of interest, just like the one who presented by our Korean friend. At the moment in KPK, I knew that actually they are developing guidance for conflict of interest. Not yet final. In my office, I also developed that. Now we are in cooperation with Menpan RB. I don't know how the English of it. Okay, I don't want to translate it because it's complicated. Menpan RB. So we are actually working on it and how to develop kind of like robust and comprehensive conflict of interest guidance. For our international audience, we just had a new conflict of interest case involving the Chief Justice of the highest court in the country. And he actually has been proved that he actually acting in contradiction with the ethic of the court, so he has to be stepped down from the Chief Justice position of Constitutional Court because of what? A conflict of interest. Unfortunately, not many cases that we can actually see it on the ground. So hopefully by the next government, we have a better conflict of interest legislation.
Okay, maybe a little bit more, Professor So, before you end the session.
In Singapore, although there are less political parties, of course the same issues can also present itself. And within politics, there are rules that are set up. Rules on where donation can come from, rules on donation limits, and then rules pertaining to usage of donations in various political activities. Then when we look at conflict of interest, at different levels, there are also provisions provided. So for example, at the ministerial level, they have the ministerial code of conduct. Then in parliament, they have their own code of conduct. And in the wider civil service, there's a code of conduct. And within it, there are stipulations that will define what is conflict of interest. And of course, these are just documents. What is important is that if there are instances, then these are pursued, either investigated by the enforcement agencies or by the accountant general or by the auditor general. So it's documenting it and then pursuing it when conflict of interest occurs.
All right, thank you so much, Professor. So I think that will be the end of the second session, unfortunately. And okay. So one more question, bonus question.
Thank you for opportunity. Introduction. My name is Junifer. My profession, I'm lecturer in law faculty in here, and the second job is I'm a lawyer. This is like a few statement and input maybe to Dr. Laode and M. Syarif. I'm not to ask, but I got something important because we know this government in Indonesia about promoting awareness programs so as to educate the mass society and the danger of corruption and instill value of integrity, accountability, and trustworthiness is so very lack of awareness, because knowledge about corruption is not available in education in Indonesia, because there is not important things that Indonesia must adopt for include in the curriculum of element of education. All the people talk about corruption, they will say this is all about law, all about practice law, like prosecutor, like judge, like lawyer only. But in like my children, like my parents, they don't come to about law. They will say, I don't care about corruption because I'm not available about this. So maybe to Mr. Dr. Laode has become trainer of the Supreme Court of Indonesia can input my statement maybe. Please give some regulation to curriculum maybe, because this is very important to all the people in Indonesia, because awareness about corruption is very important. Don't say about corruption, this is about this regulation only. But Indonesia not awareness about corruption. Thank you so much for opportunity. Thank you.
I 100% agree that corruption, it has to be approached at least in 3 prongs. One, it is education. The second, prevention, and the last resort, it has to be through the prosecutions of offenders. Actually, you are actually sitting, it's close to many KPK staff. Can you raise your hand, KPK staff? And they have a program for anti-corruption education, actually. So you can, and we have a program not only actually on elementary school, but also up to university level. Now they have, and when I was, before I became a commissioner for KPK, I also established called anti-corruption clinic in 7 law schools in Indonesia, including University of Indonesia and many other big law schools in Indonesia. But I agree with you that it is very important for anti-corruption education, just like the CPIB in Singapore, they do it. Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, they do it. And Koreans are even actually doing it. ACCA in Hong Kong, usually they actually very tough on prosecution, but they also understand the importance. So they even actually make a movie about anti-corruption. So I 100% agree, and thank you very much for your intervention. And I'll say it to the Supreme Court that you have this in your mind. Thank you very much.
All right. So